Ed, we're going to talk some district football here. We're coming up on the semifinals. Central beats Cocalico. We'll get back to that game in a moment. But I've got to ask you about Wilson. Undefeated at the time, going against Lower Dauphin, and Wilson's not undefeated anymore. What happened to the Bulldogs?
Well, one thing that happened was they had a half dozen players who were suspended.
I didn't know
prior
that,
to the
really.
game. Yeah,
interesting.
Even with that, they only lost on a 46-yard field goal in the final 10 seconds.
Yeah, it's
so
impressive.
they still gave a good accounting of themselves. I mean, they're a good team. They had a good season.
Why were they suspended? You know,
I don't know the details of that.
But that's what Wilson.
Obviously, they violated some kind of team rule.
Yeah.
Exactly what it was, I don't know. Right now I'm kind of concentrating on Manheim Central and the Bishop McDevitt game.
Well, let's get into that then. Central playing Bishop McDevitt, the Crusaders. Both of them. It's a heck of a matchup. Crusaders are first seed. Central's the second seed. Central to get there had to be a Cocalico team that was one of the hottest teams in district action right now, District 3. Were you surprised that Cocalico lost the way they did to Central? Tell me about that game. You were there.
Yeah, I thought it would be a closer game than it was. It turned out that it kind of followed the script of the first game in Cocalico back in October, where Manheim blitzed them early, got the jump, and never really relinquished the momentum. This time around, Manheim was even more impressive, coming out of the gate. Was up 35-7. To Cocalico's credit, they did make a game of it in the second half, came within 2 scores, and were driving toward making a 1-touchdown game when there was a fumble. Manheim recovered. A couple plays later, Mark Royer goes 84 yards for a touchdown, and that sealed the deal.
Talk about that touchdown, sealed the deal, but there was a block that sealed the opening lane for him as a fullback that you did a column about. So tell me a little bit about this fullback.
Justin Moreno, he's a junior, 6'1", 225 pounds. It didn't take long watching the game last week to see that wherever Justin Moreno lined up, the Barron ball carriers were going to follow. He had a great night as a blocking back, solid night at linebacker. Along with that tremendous offensive line that Manheim has, they opened up gaping holes in the defense and allowed Royer and Hanselman to kind of do their thing.
This is a really interesting matchup with McDevitt because you mentioned Moreno. We're going to talk about the defensive side in a second here, but McDevitt has beaten this year Cumberland Valley and Lower Dauphin, the two teams that are playing in the Class 4A.
Quad A final, right?
How good is McDevitt, and what should we expect in this matchup?
I don't know if they're as good as they have been in recent years. They've been the state finalists in 2 of the past 3 years. Before that, Manheim was the state finalist. So you have 2 teams who have won the last 4 District 3 championships combined and gone to the state finals. The interesting thing about this is they've never met on the field before.
That surprises me.
Considering all their success, you would think that at some point Central and McDevitt would have met. They haven't. They'll meet Friday. McDevitt is McDevitt. They're loaded. They have tremendous run-pass balance. Their quarterback Nick Marsilio, 22 touchdowns. Their running backs Andre Robinson, Rashad Lawson. Robinson, 1,700-yard back. Lawson closing in on 1,000 yards. Receivers, they've got the whole package.
Yeah, they scored 565 points. Yes. You told me earlier as well. To me, this game comes down to, and you were talking to me earlier about this, the defense. The Central linebackers are really strong this year. You can talk to me a little bit more about that? Yeah,
they have Moreno and Hanselman, both 225-pound range on the inside. They have Geib and Royer on the outside, so some speed there. I think Manheim, if they're going to win this game, they have to win a defensive battle. I think if it's going to be a shootout, the obvious edge will go to McDevitt. If Manheim can make this a defensive game, they have a shot.
Now, you're looking at doing a story later on this week about the linebackers. I know you also mentioned offensive line's really good, so tell me a little bit more about the line as well.
Manheim's offensive line has been tremendous this year. Mike Williams has told me that it's one of the best lines he's coached in his 33 years. It does say a lot. He mentioned the 2003 line, probably their best, right? But he puts this line right up there with them. And, they have like 5, 6, 7 guys they can interchange, and they don't really miss anything. So they can rotate guys in and out, keep them fresh, keep them strong. And, it's something McDevitt's going to have to deal with. I don't think McDevitt has seen a running game like Manheim's this year. I don't think they've seen an offensive line like Manheim's this year. So, I mean, Central's going to have to deal with some things, that they haven't seen with McDevitt, the speed and the talent. But McDevitt's going to have to deal with some things that they probably haven't seen in the mid-pen as far as Manheim's strength.
That offensive line for Central could be key in this game because Central comes in. They were bagged and bruised a little bit before they played Cocalico. They came out of that even more like a mash unit. The starting quarterback, Fry, dislocated shoulder.
He's probably out.
Yep. And wide receiver, defensive back, Dan, what's Dan's last
name? Dan Wiedericht. Leading receiver, return specialist, defensive back. He bruised his tailbone against Cocalico. Spent the second half on crutches on the sideline. I'm talking with Mike Williams tomorrow. We'll find out more about Dan's injury at that point. But yeah, they're nicked up, but this is week 14 of, we're closing in on basically an NFL style regular season for these kids. I'm sure McDevitt's nicked up too. I mean, you can't play 13 games and not have injuries, So we'll see what happens Friday night.
Depends who overcomes his injuries the most.
Yeah, exactly. Now, obviously, Manheim's are a little more severe because they're starting quarterback, and possibly one of their best all-around players could be out. So I don't think McDevitt has those kinds of injuries. But, it's at this point in the season, like they say, it's next man up.
I would be curious to see. I was wishing Central would come in fully loaded without the injuries, but it's going to still be a good game for what you're telling me. Watch out for the Central linebackers. Watch out for that offensive line. If they can control the line of scrimmage, and if that defense can play well, they're going to be in this game. Right?
Yeah, yep.
So you're going to have a story later on this week about the linebackers.
Actually, about the line. Manheim's offensive line.
Offensive line going to be in, and you're going to have an update on the injuries. So check out Lancaster Online and the print edition of Lancaster newspapers for more information about the Manheim Central Barons.